If you're looking for some hilarious stories and the last part of our 3-step process on creating amazing relationships in your life, stay tuned. In this episode, we will cover the last part of step 3, which is all about how to lean into challenging conversations and create deep and meaningful relationships with everyone in your life. In this episode of the Soul Method podcast, we do have some adult language. So if you have little ones around, grab your headphones now. Hi, my name is Joelle Fawcett, and this is the Soul Method podcast.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic.
Welcome back to the Soul Method podcast. I am your host and the founder of the Soul Method, Joelle Fawcett. I am so glad you're here for the final episode in our 3-step series on creating amazing relationships, first with yourself and then with those around you. Now, I want to encourage you to stop here if you haven't listened to the previous episodes of this podcast. It's really important that you go back to episode 3 and go through the series from the beginning, or else the concepts in this episode won't be very helpful for you. As I continue to produce podcast episodes, we will dive into all sorts of facets of this process. However, this series will always be the foundation of the Soul Method. For those of you who have listened to each episode of this series, I really want to acknowledge you. Our culture teaches us to do 2 things when we are emotionally triggered: to either remove these triggering people from our lives, aka, this is when someone might say that a person is toxic and stops talking to them, or to hide from the trigger itself. If you're still listening, and especially if you've been triggered by this process along the way, I want you to know that you're doing something that is both not easy and incredibly important. And I really honor you for being brave enough to dive into your process. So, quickly to review before we move on to the last portion of step 3. Step 1 we covered in episode 4, which is titled Deal with Yourself. In that episode, I talked about the method my coach used with me to process through my own emotional experiences of my life. Now, you don't have to use this specific method. There are many different healing methods and therapies out there that are very effective, and I really do not believe in a one-size-fits-all approach. However, I will say that whatever method feels right for you, make sure that it is something that is connecting with that ancient part of your brain that is responsible for your fight, flight, or freeze response, not just your rational brain. Real change only happens when we rewire our emotional and reactive core, not when we just talk about or think through things. The point is that you get yourself down to an emotional 0 or to a place of empty, so to speak. When you're at this place, you are no longer emotionally reactive based on past emotional trauma that you've built up over your years here on the earth. When you're at 0, you're at peace, and you're not bringing any of your own junk into a situation or an interaction with somebody else. Step 2 is the banana experiment, which is a tool I described in episode 5 to help give you perspective when you are in a triggering situation. This step gives you the pause, the 10 seconds we all often need to recognize Oh, I'm reacting to what's going on in front of me right now. And then be able to choose from a powerful place how we want to engage with it. The first part of step 3 I covered in episode 6, which was all about your authentic yes or no, which are the two most powerful ways you can love someone. Finding your authentic yes and no allows you to act from a clean place and dissolves resentment. Most people think they should say yes or no to please other people. This step throws that process out the window. True love and connection always come out of authenticity. Now, the last and final piece of step 3 is to get curious. When you're able to step into a conversation from a clean place and get curious, you show up as a safe and loving space for everyone in your life. This takes all of your relationships to the next level and gives you the skills to enjoy all of them. I said in the last episode that I don't have any bad relationships. This is how I do it. So, what do I mean by quote unquote getting curious? What this means is leaning into conversations from a clean place. In this place, you are unshakable, grounded, and authentic. I really get that this is hard to understand in theory, so I'm going to give you several examples of what this looks like in a minute. However, let's cover the one ground rule regarding curiosity. You cannot be curious with someone if you are taking them personally. Taking someone personally often shows up as defensiveness or you being emotionally triggered and then moving into reactionary mode. The moment you feel like you need to be right, it's over because your ego has taken over and will look to defend itself to the death. Discerning for yourself where this line is and at what point you move into taking someone personally is the work of this practice. This brings us to the next foundational principle of the SoL method. If it doesn't come out of your mouth, it's not about you. Sometimes this is hard to understand, so I'm going to say it again. If it doesn't come out of your mouth, it's not about you. Anything anyone else says is never about you. It is always about them. This is way easier to recognize in the positive than in the negative. And to be honest, this has always cracked me up, by the way, because somehow our egos are far more addicted to making someone else's negativity all about us rather than accepting any kind of positivity. For example, someone might say to you, I love those earrings, or hey, nice ride. Someone might praise you for a job well done at work or for helping out on an errand. Someone might just say, hey, thank you. In these situations, it is often easy for us to say, you're welcome, and recognize that there is a separation between us and them. They're thanking us or praising us for something, and we easily see a distinction. There really honestly aren't many people in the world who hear someone else praise, let's say, their shirt, and then go, yes, it is amazing. My shirt is the best shirt in the whole world. I love my shirt. And in fact, everyone in the world loves my shirt. Sorry, now I'm laughing because that's hysterical. But you get where I'm going here, right? More often than not, people struggle to accept praise and compliments. But we will handle that in another episode. Now, in the negative, we tend to do exactly the opposite. We hear someone else say something negative about us, and we both take it extremely personally and then get defensive. This looks like when someone says, I hate your shirt. We don't think by nature, well, I don't. Instead, we make what they said about us very personal. What's wrong with my shirt? My taste in fashion must suck. I should never have bought this. Oh, goodness, I make the worst decisions. And then, 10 seconds later, we move into defensiveness. What an ass to say something like that. Who does he think he is? Like his shirt is so amazing. So, you see how this works? Now, in this example, the reality is that if someone says they do or don't like my shirt, it has nothing to do with me. But our culture doesn't train us this way. Our culture glamorizes exactly the opposite. So, if you want to have a good laugh after listening to this episode, turn on any reality TV show and sit back. What you are going to see is a bunch of people very committed to taking each other personally to an extreme. The entertainment industry has made a gold mine on glamorizing people taking each other personally. The fact is that the quote reality of these shows isn't real at all. It's drama made up by the egos of the actors that they then take out on each other instead of being responsible for themselves. Okay, I'll get off that topic. Now, in the example about the shirt, it's easy to see and not get attached. But think of the last time you became upset or defensive because of something someone else said. The ultimate question is, at what point in the conversation did the words coming out of the other person's mouth become real to your ego instead of banana? That point of discernment is something we will always go back to. In my experience, that point is different with each person in our lives, depending on both the topic at hand as well as how close that other person is to us. Often, the closer someone is to us, the more challenging it can be to hear banana instead of taking them personally. Okay, I'm going to give you a really graphic image, and I want you to use it in your mind's eye anytime someone takes you personally or you take someone else personally. And I'm sorry in advance for this. However, my coach used this same image with me, and it really did the trick. When someone else has a negative opinion of you, or even a passing comment that you're tempted to make all about you, but actually has not been associated with you. For example, you swear you saw that guy make a face when you walked into the bar, but he's never talked to you. This is what I want you to imagine. Everyone else's negative opinions are like they literally bent over and took a poop in their own hands. Yes, you heard me. That person's opinion is now smeared shit in their hands. When someone else says something negative to you, or you're picking up negative energy from them, imagine that they are offering their hands full of shit to you with this question: do you want this? Now, in the past, I've been as guilty as you as saying, yes, I do want that pile of shit, and proceeding to smear it all over me. This self-slathering of shit looks like our egos going into defensiveness, anger, and then the energetic taking on of whatever is going on for that other person. I really want you to imagine this because it will quickly become a visceral reaction when you're offered the opportunity to pick up something that is quite literally none of your business. When you say yes to taking someone else personally, you pick up their shit and smear it on your face. The moment I started saying no to the picking up of other people's poop was the moment I was able to get curious and be a safe space for them. And this is how you can do it too. Now, I want to be really clear that this takes practice and no one is perfect because the state of being human is imperfection. This work is like any other muscle that you train. Honestly, it's a lot like going to the gym. At first, it's uncomfortable and really awkward because everything is new and these machines are weird and I don't know what clothes I'm wearing. Like, are these pants supposed to be high waisted or low waisted? Does anybody know? Everything in this situation is new and it's impossible to know if you are doing it right. However, as you learn, it becomes easier and easier to have better form and proper alignment. You're able to do more reps and your muscles grow stronger. Over time, muscle memory and instinct begin to fall into place, and you're able to make discernments and find your place of alignment quickly. And even after years of practice, I still have days where I'm off and I need to reassess what's going on for me. That's all okay and a part of the process. Folks, don't judge the process. Just be committed to learning from it. Ultimately, here's why growing to the place of curiosity is so incredibly important if you want to create deep and fulfilling relationships with the people in your life. No one can have the freedom to feel their feelings if you are committed to having feelings about their feelings. I will say that again because I know it's a tongue twister. No one can have freedom to feel their feelings if you are committed to having feelings about their feelings. Another way to say this is if you're committed to taking the people around you personally, you're committed to a life of codependency. And in that, no one can experience true freedom or love. When you're able to be curious, you are no longer in a state of codependency, and instead, you can create interdependent relationships. On that topic, there will definitely be a future episode. So let's take a look at an example because I really believe that this is the type of thing that is hard to understand until you see it in action. Let's start with a simple example, and then we'll move on to a more challenging, aka potentially triggering one. Simple example. And this is one I am sure that any parent out there has experienced. Your child throws a fit. Simple. Big emotions. It could be about anything. Video games, ice cream, a play date, or if your kids are older, it could be a refusal to up his or her allowance, having a curfew, or restricting access to his or her smartphone. If you have kids, think about the last time your son or daughter had a temper tantrum. For me, I'll pick the example of my 4.5-year-old throwing a fit because she wanted another pack of gummy bears. She's already had 3 packs today, and now she wants another one. But mommy, just one more. But mommy, just one more, mommy. I say, I've said no because we've already had 3 today. But mommy! And the tears start. I love you so much. What do you need? Just one more! I am so sorry you're having a hard time, Jojo. I can offer you some snuggles, or we can play a game together, or read a book. That last statement is me leaning in and choosing how I can engage with her. I acknowledge how she is feeling and tell her how I can support her. But why not one more? My decision is final, and I am done with this conversation. How can I be with you right now? Do you want some hugs? One more, mommy. Okay, it sounds like you need some space. Let me know when you're ready. for cuddles or a book or a game. Now, 9 times out of 10, when I go to walk away, she will say, "Wait, I want some cuddles." And then I'll sit with her on the couch and soothe her hair and ask her questions about school or her friends. And it's done within a few minutes. No name calling, no blaming. I am unruffled and completely happy snuggling my baby girl on the couch. Now, if I was going to take her personally, it would have looked like this. She says, "I just want one more." And I would have said something along the lines of, "Don't you disrespect me. I've said no." "But why not just one more, Mommy?" "You need to learn to listen to me. I'll take away your toys if you don't listen." "Don't do that." "You think you can do this to me? This is not okay." And it's done. Once you react, you're going into a defensive state and co-creating a negative situation. This is the start of a spiral that will end in yelling and tears. And at the end of the day, you never actually addressed the needs of your child or given them a safe space to be upset because you were so worried about being respected or listened to. Honestly, I see this happen all the time between parents and children, and it breaks my heart because what that child is actually saying under the temper tantrum is, "I'm hurting and I don't know what to do." And they're reaching out to the only people in their lives who can show them how to handle their own big emotions. The problem is that so many parents don't have the space for their child's emotions because they haven't spent any time processing their own trauma. My coach often told me while I was learning this, quote, "Always remember, if you cannot be curious about a person, you don't really have a relationship with them. You just have codependence." Now, if you're new at this and just starting this practice, I want to give you 100% permission to take a time out whenever you need to. What I mean by this is the moment you feel yourself becoming defensive or emotionally triggered, the best thing you can do is pause, be authentic and honest with the other person, even if it's your child, and take a time out. The only exception to this is obviously if your child is an infant and completely incapable of caring for themselves in any way. All you have to say is, "Wow, I'm having a big reaction right now. I need a moment." The minute you start to move emotionally away from 0 and go to 3, 4, uh-oh, I'm at a 5. Stop. Both Joe and my kids know that I put myself in timeout anytime this happens. I'll go to the bathroom, close the door, and take 3 deep breaths. I'll spend 2 minutes tapping and releasing my own big emotions, and then I'll go back. I may not be all the way at 0. I might be just down to a 2, but that's okay. I can get to 0 later after the situation is put to rest. As long as I've stopped the roller coaster of my own emotions and gotten myself under control, I can re-engage from a healthy place and ask them what they need. Sometimes, if the temper tantrum is rough or the other person is having a lot of big emotions, I'll need to take more than one time out. That's okay too. Here's the point. Do whatever you need to do to remain committed to being personally responsible for your own emotional state and to not taking anyone else personally. Okay, let's go through another example because that one was pretty common and not as incredibly triggering as they often are. I want to take you back to November of 2020. Anyone remember what happened that month? Yep, the United States presidential election. Now, I don't personally believe in putting a bunch of ridiculous memes on social media when it comes to politics, because, quite frankly, I've never heard anyone say, "Oh my God, I saw that thing on Facebook and it totally changed my entire political orientation." That just doesn't happen, right? Also, remember that last foundational principle of the SoL method. Anything that doesn't come out of your mouth isn't about you. We must recognize here that social media has built an entire empire on exactly the opposite principle. Honestly, if I could rewrite the description of Facebook, I would say, the worldwide social platform where we give you the opportunity to take everyone else's business and make it your own. Do I still participate in social media? Yes, absolutely. Do I get butthurt when somebody posts something that I don't agree with? Nope. None of my business. Now, back in November of 2020, the entire world was at a tipping point, and election arguments had made many of my family and friends enemies with each other. At that point, I had not said a word about my political status publicly because I really didn't think it was anyone's business. I make my choices based on strict personal research around topics that are very important to me, not based on popularity, he said, she said gossip, or mass media reports that clearly have an agenda of their own. On the day of the election, I put up one photo on Facebook of me after I came out of voting. That photo was of me in my required mask with my I voted sticker across my cheek. The title of the post was, quote, "Get out there and vote!" exclamation point. Hashtag Trump 2020. That was it. Do you know how many comments that post wound up generating over the next few days? Let's just say it was a lot. Now, at this point, I was deep in my work with my coach, and I decided to see this as one grand experiment with myself. Could I get curious with the people who took me personally on social media and chose to say some pretty negative things about me? For me, this was my first big and very public test. I had plenty of people make sarcastic remarks on that post. People called me a racist, a traitor, a toxic person, and a Nazi. Please don't think that my Democrat friends were the only ones who responded this way. I also had several friends on all sides of the political spectrum respond to the responses on the post until it became an argument back and forth between people that did not even involve me. As I saw the comments come in, I was honestly shocked. I hadn't expected this kind of reaction, and I was also saddened by the reality that my associates on social media didn't seem to have any other way of responding to someone who appeared to be in a different camp than them. This knee jerk reaction made it clear to me that they were emotionally triggered, and the only way they could handle it was to proverbially push me away to protect themselves from the threat that the ancient part of their brains were perceiving. Now, we all see the reality. They weren't actually threatened. I wasn't standing over them with a knife, and I wasn't even there in person with them, nor had I said anything negative about the Democratic Party or Biden. Huh, interesting. So I got curious. To each person who commented on my post, I invited them into a conversation. I thanked them for their response, regardless of how negative it was, and I said, I see this as bringing something up for you. I'd be really happy to chat with you about it privately. I want to know why you voted the way you did, and I'd like to share with you why I voted the way I did. I believe if we open the conversation and share from the heart, we can bridge the gap that the media has really wanted to create between Democrats and Republicans in this election. There were plenty of people who kept trying to argue with me in the open forum, but I held true to my instincts and put my foot down. If the person came back with a negative response, I would say, "Hey, I'm really sorry that you don't seem to want to have a private conversation where we can talk and honor each other's opinions. Let me know when you're ready for that, and I'd be happy to chat." Out of the 60 plus people who commented on my post, do you know how many people took me up on that offer to have a real conversation? 3, less than 5%. But you also know what? Those 3 people that I talked to opened a whole new world for me, and I believe for them. All of those 3 people said to me, "Oh, wow, I hadn't even thought of that," when I told them about why I had voted the way that I did. And I was able to truly appreciate where they were on topics and what was important to them. It deepened our friendships, and even in situations where we didn't agree, both of us came out of the conversation feeling complete and authentic. There were, of course, a handful of people who just wanted to argue and be angry. To them, I was clear that I wasn't interested. I don't see how we can authentically show up and create space for another person when we are bickering on a social media platform. So, to these people, I simply stopped responding. The absolute best part about this situation, though, were the other private messages I received. And there were lots of these from people on all sides and corners of the political spectrum saying, "Thank you. Thank you for stepping out of the toxic spiral and creating an opportunity for real conversation and connection. I want to tell you that how you engage with other people matters. Your commitment to curiosity rather than codependency will absolutely change your life, and it can create the space for change for anyone who wants to engage with you at that level." Now, was this easy for me? Absolutely not. It is far easier to throw a temper tantrum when things don't go your way or remove yourself out of fear. This would have looked like me getting really defensive and arguing with these people on Facebook or simply deleting the post. Personal responsibility is not easy, but it is always the path to personal peace. Remember, people can only bring to you things that you are home for. If you have no space for the other person's negativity, it's very simple to look at the poop in their hands and simply say, "No, thank you." There is no greater gift you can give to someone than refusing to engage with their lowest self and instead creating the space for them to step into a place of responsibility. Okay, ready for one last example? I want to show you how these situations are often not so black and white, but can come in various colors and take time to discern. This one goes back to the early days of me and Joe's relationship. Last spring, Joe and I reconnected. We had met a handful of times before, but neither of us were in a place previously to see each other as a potential partner. I will do an entire episode on the manifestation of our relationship because I 100% knew in the core of my alignment when we reconnected that night that we were destined for each other. But that's only because I had been working for months with my coach on what I desired my future relationship to look like, as well as dealing with myself in the present to create the peaceful, energetic space necessary for manifestation. I knew what I was looking for, and I knew when it found me. Now, did I tell Joe about all of this in the moment? Absolutely not. It took me months actually to tell him about how I had energetically planned and prepared to meet him, and about everything my intuition had known that night. Now, again, I promise I will do an episode really soon on this entire process for those of you who are curious or interested in creating the same manifestation of relationships in your own life, whether it's friendships, romantic relationships, or professional relationships. Back to my example. In the early days of really getting to know each other, I did what I normally did in these situations, which is jump in with both feet. However, I was also clear and careful. I remember asking Joe very early on if he was looking for a relationship or at that point, he just wanted to stay friends. He said he wasn't looking for a relationship, but he also wasn't against seeing what happened between us. He said he wanted things to quote unquote feel right. And it was clear to me through the conversations we had that he had been burned several times in other relationships. Reading between the lines, he wasn't wanting to be hurt again, nor did he want the drama and codependency that he had experienced in many of his past relationships. I appreciated his honesty, and I was frustrated. My energy quickly became needy and sticky because I knew I had manifested this. Side note to both men and women, needy, sticky energy is never attractive. I brought all of this to my coach, saying to her, I just need to prove to him that I'm not like those other girls. I feel like I need to have a conversation about how I'm different, how I'm not codependent. And in that moment, I am so grateful that my coach nailed my ass. Are you trying to manipulate him into something he said he clearly does not want at this moment? My mouth fell open. Damn it. She softened. If you feel like you need to have a conversation to make a relationship okay in any way, you are being codependent and you are taking where he is right now very personally. You don't need a conversation. You need to deal with your energetic urgency and engage with him exactly as the person you are committed to being. If it's meant to happen like you believe, then it will, but not because of you forcing your own timeline onto it. You see, no one is perfect. After that session with my coach, I immediately dealt with myself and pulled my energy back from Joe and onto my own sense of self. You know what? He asked me out a week later. And over the past year, we have developed an absolutely incredible relationship. In this situation, I needed to get curious with myself to discern the codependent pattern that was starting to rear its ugly head. Whenever you feel anxious or frustrated, it's a sign that you are out of alignment and in codependency, because anxiety and frustration are based on you putting your sense of power outside of yourself. In those moments, take a breath and get curious. Where do you need to pull your energy back? At what point did you step out of alignment? Where can you be responsible? Now, before we bring this episode to a close, I do have to address the fact that you will have people in your life who will be offended by your curiosity. These are the people who are committed to taking you and everyone else very personally and committed to codependency. For these people, the thought of being personally responsible is often terrifying because they aren't ready to step into the place of ownership of their life. When you're in a relationship with someone who does not want to take responsibility, It will always be your fault. These are the people who are unable to see situations with perspective or objectivity. You will always have to show up a certain way in that relationship to accommodate the other person's emotions. Here's an example of a situation like this. Years ago, my mom's best friend came over to our house, and she was talking about her son and her son's girlfriend. Now, this was before I started doing this work, but even then, I could see the codependency and lack of personal responsibility in this situation. My mom's friend was telling us about how her son's girlfriend had bought him a jacket for his birthday and how she was so upset about it. I was going to buy him a jacket, and she didn't even ask me about what I had planned to get him. She must not think very much of me, she had said. Now, if you know me at all, you know that I'm a very blunt person, and this hasn't changed much in my life. When I heard her say this, I blurted out, "I'm pretty sure that she wasn't thinking about you when she was getting your son a birthday gift." Did I mention I didn't have much tact either? There was dead silence in the room for about 10 seconds. And then my mom's friend went on with her story and continued complaining as if I hadn't said anything. This is a classic example. My mom's friend was so committed to making everything in her life about her, she couldn't even see an alternative to this situation. Everyone is going to have people in their lives who are like this. It doesn't make these people bad or wrong. It just means that they are on their journey and you are on yours. Do not judge them. Examine your engagement with them and use that relationship to grow. Most people on their healing journey meet people who are committed to codependency and go, they're toxic. They're dangerous. Run away. Because, yeah, these relationships can be incredibly challenging and very triggering for you. Don't run away. Remember, if you are going to love a person, you must become invulnerable to their shadow. If you have a relationship in your life that is triggering, get curious with yourself. Don't run away. Lean in. Safety is not created by removing people from your life. Safety is created when nothing inside another person in your life is seen as dangerous to you. I have some people in my life right now who are very committed to taking me personally. And, to be honest, I am so grateful for these relationships. Without them, I would never have grown to the place that I am today. Please note, I am obviously not talking about abusive situations here or relationships that are actually dangerous to your well-being. If you are in a relationship where physical or emotional harm is being done to any member of your family and you need help, please dial 911. All of that being said, well done. You've made it to the completion of our series on healthy relationships. Now, I want to hear from you. What are your biggest takeaways from this episode? Have you been practicing any pieces of this 3-step process? What has your experience been? As always, if you have questions or would like to meet with me one-on-one for coaching, absolutely reach out. You can send me a message on our Facebook page or email me at joelle@the.SoL.method.com. If you'd like to contact me via phone, drop a comment here and I'll send you that information privately. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, for traffic.